What is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? It's your boy Goblin, and today we're coming in with a very interesting video. A video that's a bit different from my normal uploads. In today's video, we're covering an important topic. We're going to talk about whether or not smoking crack was worth it. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Drop a like if you do. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And also, make sure to head over to goblin420.com and use code GOBLIN at checkout to get 20% off any order of any size. I'm gonna let it run through the rest of the month, so you have until February 1st to use that code. But without further ado, let's dive right into the video. So before we dive into today's topic, I think it's important to give a little bit of backstory, especially for those of you watching this video who might be new to my content. So back when I was younger, when I was 17, I was still in high school, my friends and I had gotten together and we decided to smoke crack. Now, I'm not going to tell too much of the story because we have a whole separate video about that, which I will link below, but it was a very spontaneous kind of thing. It wasn't really planned, and I only did it once. I never tried it again after this single incident. So if you guys want to hear the story about it, that'll be linked below, but in this video, we're focused on whether or not it was worth it. Because despite the fact that I only tried it one time, it really impacted my life in a lot of ways. One of the biggest ways that it impacted me is that I used it to justify a lot of the other things that I ended up doing later into my life. I was only 17 when I smoked crack, so I was pretty early into my drug addiction. There was still a lot of things that I hadn't done yet. The entirety of my coke binge of 2019 had not happened yet. And, you know, after I did crack for the first time, I would find myself using that to justify a lot of the other things that I did. It was almost like a running joke among my friend group, where whenever there was a situation where I was maybe going to take a crazy amount of acid, or I was going to get super drunk, or just do something stupid, the way that we would always joke about it and rationalize it is be like, well, the crack thing happened, you know, or even to myself when my friends weren't involved, when I was thinking of whether or not I should do something, a lot of the time I would just be like, fuck it, I smoked crack, how bad can it be? And it kind of gave me this almost disregard for myself mentally that other drugs didn't necessarily do. I never used that rationale with cocaine or psychedelics or any other drugs that I did, but crack was the one thing where it was just so out there that I was like, you know, this can't be as bad as that, so I might as well do it. This was especially prevalent during my cocaine binges, when I would sit there and think to myself that I'd already done the concentrated form of coke, so how much could 5 more lines hurt, you know? Might as well go for it. It was something that, you know, I feel like if I never actually did this, if I never actually smoked crack, there might have been a lot of situations that I wouldn't have put myself in. However, at the same time, I don't view all of those situations that I got into as bad situations. In fact, some of my fondest memories off tons of psychedelics probably wouldn't have happened if I didn't smoke crack and then just go balls to the wall with everything else. So it's kind of a double-edged sword for me in that aspect. Now, in terms of how smoking crack impacted me socially, I can't really think of any negative effects. I mean, I don't think I've ever tried to hide it. Many people in my life know that I've done it. I mean, my own mother knows that I've smoked crack. So it's not like it's some shocking, you know, big secret of mine. However, the only negative situation that I can think of socially that ever came out of this was one time I was on a date. This was like a first date with a girl that I had just started talking to. And this was a few years ago. This was like 2019, if I remember correctly. We had gone out to dinner, nothing special, and I had gone home that night. The date went just fine, and during dinner, she was asking me what I did for a living, and normally I don't tell people over social media what I normally do for a living if they don't already know. It's not something I bring up, you know, because you guys see my videos, might not look good early on into dating someone, you know? So I made the mistake of being real and telling her what I really did for a living. I've learned my lesson, all right? I've learned my lesson since then. You can't tell anyone, all right? But I told her what I did. I told her about my YouTube, and she goes on my YouTube channel and texts me about it the next day, and she's like, "You've smoked crack?" And I was like, yeah, and I'm telling her about it a little bit. And we never saw each other again after that first date. And it's not like that evening went poorly. She was still texting me after. I wholeheartedly believe it was the crack video. So that's probably the only negative impact socially that I've ever had from smoking crack. Otherwise, it's been pretty all right. Hey, the video got some views. Now, let's get to the big one. This is arguably the biggest point of whether or not it was worth it to smoke crack. Let's talk about the effects. We covered this in my story about the video, but really in retrospect, looking back at it, because at the time when I first did it, I think I thought it was a lot cooler than it really was. There was this sense of like, damn, I'm fucking nuts. When I first smoked crack, I almost couldn't believe it. And I was kind of hyped up about it. I can't lie. My inner fiend was just going crazy. I was like, wow, I really just did that. But in retrospect, looking back at it, it was probably the worst drug that I've ever done. I've always been a super impulsive person, but this was something that I was so curious about. I felt back then when I was younger that I needed to try it. Nowadays, I would never do that, but back then I just felt the need to try it. And granted, the effects might have been bad because we made it ourselves instead of getting it, but also it's not like I had a damn crack plug, okay? Let's be real here. So, the best way to describe the effects of how it felt is it's like if you took a cocaine high and just put it on fast forward. You just sped it up. Instead of being geeked off a line for like 30 minutes or 40 minutes or however long it lasts you, the crack only lasted us for like 2 to 3 minutes. But it was very intense. It was like a quick little roller coaster, You rose up, you hit your peak, you got a little angry. I felt some real crackhead rage in me. And then you come down and you're fine. And it was a whole lot less fun than I ever expected it to be. In my head, I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, people got to be crackheads for a reason, dude. Look at this. These people are throwing their lives away for crack. But it genuinely is an awful drug. With some substances, for example, heroin, you hear from other people that it feels amazing and that's why you should never try it. But you never really hear that about crack. And it makes me curious. It makes me wonder, how do people even really get hooked on this shit? I feel like there's so many better stimulants out there that are A, slightly less questionable, and B, would last you a little longer, that it begs the question, who in the right mind is smoking crack? Well, that's an oxymoron, dude. Nobody, actually. So I guess I answered my own question there. And despite the drug being absolutely terrible, not having any fun making it or smoking it whatsoever, well, okay, it was kind of fun making it, all right, I will admit. But despite the drug being absolutely terrible, the slightly negative social connotations of it, and also the very real negative effect it had on me mentally in the sense of rationalizing every other bad decision I could have made ever, despite all of those factors, it was still one of my fondest memories of my younger days, because I look back at it and it is just the peak of my idiocy. It is just the peak of my stupidity. That was the point where I look back and I'm like, wow, that was really my stupidest fucking moment, I know a lot of other people that do similar drugs to me. I know a lot of people who are into the psychs just like me. I know a lot of people who have popped the pills just like me. Cokeheads, stoners, you name it, I have a lot of friends who fit into all of those categories. But the people that I smoked crack with on this particular day are the only people that I know would be willing to do that. And even nowadays, my friend Kyle, who was there, would not be willing to do that. My other friend who I did it with unfortunately passed away, and part of me thinks that is why it is one of my favorite memories, and part of why I look back on it so fondly, It was just an absolutely insane moment with a good friend of mine that I'm not necessarily going to get to see again. I was, however, fortunate enough that I absolutely did not enjoy smoking crack, and it also kind of showed me that I didn't really want to explore the avenues of the real hard drugs, I was popping my pills, I was doing my Xanax, I was, not really doing a ton of coke at this point when I had smoked crack, but I was into a lot of drugs. However, I think this is something that fortunately stopped me from venturing further. Another thing that I think about sometimes is if I didn't end up trying trying crack, I probably would have still had that kind of crackhead energy within me, you know, that desire to experiment further. And I worry that if I would have ended up trying a different drug that's kind of in the same category, the same level of like, damn, you're a real drug addict category, the other options in that same field in my eyes are realistically heroin and meth. And I think both of those would have been much worse options for me to start dabbling in that playing field. So let's get to the question overall that we proposed in the beginning of this video. Was smoking crack worth it? It's something that I'm conflicted about because on one hand, I have plenty of other experiences that didn't involve the smoking crack, and I'm sure that even if I didn't do that, even if I didn't have that kind of crutch to rationalize a lot of the things that I did when I was younger, I probably still would have done a lot of the things that I did, but maybe not all of them. However, it was a terrible experience that taught me a lesson, you know? It was a terrible high. It just made me pissed off, but it taught me about myself. It taught me that I didn't really want to go that far. I learned something from it, but it took me a little while to learn from it. For a while, it was something that I used as an excuse, and I used it to my advantage, I thought. But in reality, it wasn't to my advantage at all. And it took me a little while until I got older and was able to think back on it and spend more time, you know, dwelling on it, that I realized, like, damn, dude, this shit was not worth it, you know? Personally, if I could go back in time and redo it, and I know that every now and then I make jokes and I tweet and I'll be like, damn, maybe I should smoke crack again. But in all seriousness, if I could go back in time, I would probably not smoke the crack. However, I still might have assisted in the cooking of it. So with that being said, there's our official rating of whether or not smoking crack was worth it. Personally, for me, I don't think it was. When I was younger, my answer probably would have been different. You know, I viewed it as something that really almost defined me as a person when I was younger. I just thought it was the coolest thing ever that I was so crazy and out there to smoke crack. But now, looking back at it, it's something that I don't really think changed me for the better in any way. And in fact, it probably had more negative impacts on me than it did positive. I am glad that I got to do that and get that itch out of me, because God only knows what I would have done if I held it in. But at the same time, I don't know, man. It's something that I wish me and my friends weren't such fucking idiots, if I'm being completely honest. But thankfully, we were fucking idiots, so you guys got the crack video, and now this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Drop a like if you did. If any of you guys have experienced smoking crack, share your thoughts on whether or not it was worth it for you in the comments below. I hope that's not very many of you. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out, gamers.